It's a spin. It's an old Christian spin, where they just preach love and love and love and love, just like what they did in the days of slavery, where they indoctrinated the children of slavery, but, with all kinds of foolishness. They painted the picture of white Jesus, called themselves Gentiles, gave them a different Bible and a book to read, and a different kind of understanding. And they passed it down to generations and generations, 400 years to be in fact, of that indoctrination. I understand why Larry and the other gentleman on the phone are so convinced in what they're speaking about. It's an indoctrination. It's now become who they are. And they need to read the Willie Lynch letter and what he did and what he said, why he was the most successful slave master in the Caribbean. Then they'll start to understand why they're believing such falsity. So,
can I ask you a question, Tyrone?
Who we are as... Huh?
Can I ask you a question, Tyrone? Yeah. Is the scripture just for Israel? Is that what you're saying? Or is it open to anybody else?
No. I'm not. The scripture is written by Israelites for Israelites and about Israelites. Now, if you want to understand that book without being so confused, like some of the others are speaking, you need to go to an Israelite. They're saying about the Spirit and Jesus, but who was Jesus speaking to? This is what we have to understand. Who was Jesus the Christ speaking to? He spoke to his 12 and his disciples that followed him, right? Jesus, he was an Israelite. His 12 were all Israelites. 11 Israelites and one was a Canaanite. Just to show and to fulfill the word of grace. But then we want to get into that because that's above their head. You have to understand, not all of the 12 were all Israelites. One was a Canaanite because it was showing them of things to come. Okay? You have to understand that. Now, when he's now speaking, because now they seem to understand that, number one, that they're going to heaven and all this stuff. But if you read Luke 16, it is very clear. It is so clear there, right? When there was the rich man and Lazarus, both of whom were Israelites. Let's make that clear. There wasn't a Gentile and an Israelite. They both were Israelites. And one ended up in hell, and the other, and Lazarus ended up in Abraham's bosom. Now, what did he say? He said, let me go back and tell them what they were doing is wrong. No. He said, if they don't hear Moses and the prophets, they won't hear you. So again, who is he speaking to? An Israelite. Who is he? It's all relating to Israel. It's simple. I know people are going to find it hard in their heart to believe that. That's good luck to them. It's a bitter pill for them to swallow because they're so, it's indoctrinated within them to be accustomed with the lie. It's so nice. I mean, Larry, who the last call was talking about the Christmas tree. Now, the Christmas tree is evil. It's simple, right? Jesus never celebrated a Christmas tree. Did you see him put up a tree and sit down with gifts with all the children? Did you see him do that? No. Did you see any of the people in the Bible do that? No. Did Paul do that? No. They knew not to do that because they were Israel. It was a heathen tradition. It was a tradition that was not of the children of Israel. And Jeremiah, and even it was saying, do not do these. Do not do like the heathens do. So if he's saying the heathens who are not Israel, then who is he speaking to? The Israelites.
So let me ask you a question.
I don't know why they need a specific question, that's a specific verse that says only Israel. The whole book is Israel. The whole book is teaching Israel.
Tyrone.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a question, Tyrone. My background is Portuguese, right? So where do I fit in all this that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I fit in?
Listen, you're Portuguese, right?
Yes.
If you now go and you, like you said, you hold on to the cloak of an Israelite and said, I will go with you. I believe your God. Your God will be my God. And you come from your background and you now follow the way of an Israelite. You are an Israelite. You're circumcised like an Israelite. You do the customs of an Israelite. You are an Israelite. You do everything as how we do. You're an Israelite. The skin color doesn't matter. So I don't know why these guys are clinging on to all this stuff and saying this. They don't have no understanding. You have to understand that. Right? Let's just make that clear. Now, our God will do exactly as he feels and pleases, but he will not forsake his children. Because when we read the first scripture in Romans 11 and throughout, it says, has God cast away his people? That's a question.
Okay, I got another question for you.
No.
I got another question before we go to Elder Mike. In the scripture, the Gentiles that Paul taught, they didn't have to get circumcised. They just had to refrain from strangled meat and blood and things like that.
That's right.
What's the difference between those Gentiles and you saying that I could come in and get circumcised and do all these things? It seems like there's a difference.
The difference is that moment, at that time, the council had to make a decision what was about to take place. So now these specific ones, who at the time it was unlawful for Gentiles and Israel or Jews to be mixing together. So okay, if you believe in our God, this is what we will. This is what you do. It was a decision made by the council, the Israelite council, might I say. At that time, if you read very, very carefully, like with Paul, very carefully, that all they had to do was abstain from bloody things and being strangled for that time. You have to understand the timing is critical for everything. Now, if they now say they want to be Israel and they circumcise themselves, because you can't sit the Passover unless you're circumcised, and you can go way back in the book of Exodus, Leviticus, that says that. And they circumcise themselves, and they want to now become and do as we do, then there's no difference between them and us. Okay. They are now become an Israelite. Okay. So they now become part or grafted in, as you were, of the inheritance, the giving of the law, the promises, everything as an Israelite. That's the wisdom of our God. That is the wisdom of our God and the God of that book. I don't know which other God these guys are calling on, but it's not the God of this book. So he made it clear. You have to understand, Paul was going through something. He was given a job to do. He exalted his own office. So therefore, he had to come up with things to look good in front of these Gentiles. Gentiles meaning they were not of thy people, Israel. Right? Israel can never, ever be forsaken. Doesn't matter if they don't want to believe. I don't really care, because it even speaks about, even in the book of Isaiah, about a very small remnant. A small remnant. So I'm grateful when they don't hear about the true living God, because they're only fulfilling what he said. That not all will hear. Not all will hear.
Okay.
This is of truth.
Okay.
They cannot. They can't. That's why they come up with their own stories and make themselves feel good, and interpret me to lie with the scripture, lie about it. I haven't heard no one go right back to the beginning and speak about Moses and what he said, because they can't. How could you read a book from the middle of the book or the end of the book? And again, talking about that, I have to say this. When it comes down to the end of days, I know I'm going to be going a bit fast here for some of them people, but I've got to say this. There's 12 gates you've got to go through. There's 12 gates. Do they know what these 12 gates are? Can they wander in through the 12 gates with the uncircumcised self, pork eating self? You can't do that, because it's very specific to the children of Israel. 12 gates you've got to go through. And again, that's pearls. I'm not going to be handing it out so easy. But there's 12 gates, and they're symbol of the children of Israel. And you tell me, anybody that doesn't call themselves an Israel, I understand that it's a secret with a password to get through. How are you going to walk in through those gates?
Okay.
The elder something said that he's going to heaven. How?
All right.
John 3, verse 13 says, he's he who's not ascended up to heaven, you descended from heaven. You're not going to heaven. You cannot go to heaven. And that's a lie. It's an old Christian Pentecostal Baptist lie that the slave masters taught the children of slavery. You're not going to heaven.
Okay, Tyrone.
After death is judgment.
All right, Tyrone. Don't go nowhere, Tyrone. Don't go nowhere.